What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Camper Report. I'm kind of doing this series during the summer called Around the NFL. Obviously, it's a dead period, so we're kind of going around NFL fan bases, going to content creators there, getting their perspective on their teams. So today we've got kind of a guy that I was referred to from another Falcons content creator, Mad Mike Sports. Shout out to him. But we've got Jew Talk Sports. His YouTube and Twitter are in the description. Jew, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get to starting it, your YouTube channel? How did you get to start actually liking the Falcons? And yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I actually became a Falcons fan. And first off, thanks for having me on, Ben. I appreciate it. Definitely shouts out to my brother, Mad Mike Sports, for referring you over to me. Definitely go and check out Mad Mike Sports channel. Hit that like and subscribe button. He definitely is one of my mentors and definitely one of my brothers. One third of the heavy hitters podcast. So me, Mad Mike, and K Style. So shouts out to them. Shouts out to AFN, Atlanta Falcons Nation. Y'all definitely go hit that like and subscribe button for them. But to get back to what you were saying, as far as how I became a Falcons fan, so we were talking a little bit in the back, and basically, I'm actually from the state of Virginia. So if you guys know
Right.
Michael Vick, which I believe everybody knows, the
I
great
love that guy.
Michael Vick.
Yeah.
Yes, I actually grew up in Virginia. When he was playing at Virginia Tech, I was a huge fan. And when he was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, that's what actually made me become an Atlanta Falcons fan, was the great
Mhm.
Michael Vick. So that's a little bit of background. But as far as starting my YouTube channel, I started my YouTube channel, I believe, in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So it was
Okay,
just
cool.
something I was very passionate about. Been a Falcons fan since like 2000, because that's around when Michael Vick was drafted, 2000, 2001. But I've been a diehard fan ever since. We know, all of the things that Michael Vick went through. I didn't think he would ever get back into the league. So I basically just stuck with
Mhm.
the Atlanta Falcons. They've been my team ever since. And we've been going hard, man. So I appreciate it, man.
Interesting. I did not. My brothers actually are Eagles fans, and so they kind of know a little bit about that. Michael Vick is their favorite player. To me, I love that like comeback story. Like to me, my favorite Niners player is Frank Gore. He didn't have like he had similar not maybe not issues with the law and that, but he did tear his ACL twice. He was a comeback story. So I like that like underdog story where the individual really had to make it out from nothing and had to basically restart their career. And then obviously Andy Reid, and I can't remember who was the coach at the time of the 49ers when he got Frank Gore or drafted him. But yeah, those guys took a chance on those individuals and it panned out for the better. So yeah, I love that Michael Vick is the reason why you became a Falcons fan because um that he has a really cool story. So
Most definitely, yeah. Michael Vicks, the 757 stand up. Yeah, Virginia. He's from around the same area, Hampton, Newport News. I grew up in Chesapeake, Virginia. My wife's from Virginia Beach. So that 757 area, the seven cities, they kind of stick together. So shouts out to, Michael Vick. But we've had a number of players come out of that area. Percy Harvin, and the
yeah.
list goes on and on. Plexico Burris is just to name a few. But it's been a lot of guys that come from that Virginia area. So it's something in the water there in Virginia as far as those, NFL greats.
So I don't know. Obviously, your Twitter and your YouTube is in the description. Is there anywhere else they can find you, or what are their platforms? Just real quick,
So
Jew Talk Sports. Yeah.
mainly it's Twitter and also Instagram, and
Okay.
basically all of them you can follow me at Jew Talk Sports. So I kind of keep it plain and simple for everybody
Yeah.
to know how to reach me. But mainly Twitter is I'm heavy on Twitter, and I definitely also am on Instagram and also on YouTube here. But all of them you can find me at Jew Talk Sports.
See, I'm not on Instagram, so like I probably should get on it, but to me, it's just another waste of time. And I'm already on Instagram a lot, or not Instagram, YouTube. But yeah. But let's get to the comments a little bit. Amanda Reed, Jew, what's up? AFN in the building. Mad, that's Will the Georgia Reaper. That's interesting. I'm here, bro. Mad Mike Sports. He's in the building. Shout out to him. Go subscribe to his channel as well. Amanda Red says red and black. That's obviously your team. I'm kind of wearing red and black right here too, so you know that
Yeah,
red and black kind of jersey. I want us to bring those back so bad because I think for a year the 49ers had red and black jerseys. They were our color rush, and
yeah.
I wish that we would bring because I like those jerseys a lot. But anyways, Niner Sickness Pod, welcome. That's a kind of a regular of the show, so thank you for coming in. And then he says, "Hello, everyone. What's up, Mike?" Just talk in the chat. So if let's get started though to kind of some of the main points. And the first one we have today is your guys' running back that I absolutely adored. I don't have my notes because I did kind of a breakdown of Bijan Robinson. Actually, my notebook that I have all my draft stuff in is right over there. I could go get it. But I did a lot of breakdown on Bijan Robinson. He break the record for the most broken tackles out of any running back in college football history? Yeah.
I believe so. If he didn't break the record, he definitely is one of the, one of the better running backs when it comes to being elusive and breaking tackles. But I know he has one of those records.
Yeah. Well, anyways, my question to you is, they obviously have Algier and they have Kyle Pitts. And I heard somewhere that, Bijan Robinson is expected to be like less of a red zone player, more of like a receiver out of the backfield. I heard a little bit about that. What, how are they going to use him in his first year? Obviously, he's a high pick, one of the highest running backs ever drafted, which I think it's worth it because this guy is just so elusive, really never ever goes down on the first tackle ever. Obviously played for Texas, running back from Texas. So, how are they going to use him in his first year with all the weapons that they have? Because this offense is a very underrated offense that's going to break out this year if everything goes right.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like Bijan Robinson, first off, let me tell you this. Like before the draft, we all do our little pre-draft, players,
Right.
we do our prospect videos and things of that nature. And I was one of those guys that really didn't want the Falcons to take a running back this high.
Mm.
I did want us to go after like an edge rusher or a defensive lineman because we struggled as far as getting pressure on the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
We struggled
Yeah.
last season. I believe only had 21 sacks, and we've kind of been in the bottom half or the bottom of the league when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback and getting sacks. But Bijan Robinson, I really like him for this Atlanta Falcons team because of his versatility. Arthur
Mm-hmm.
Smith, if you know, he did coach with the Tennessee Titans, where he was their offensive coordinator prior to being the Falcons head coach. And we know what he did with Derrick Henry. If you go take a
Mm-hmm.
look, Derrick Henry rushed for over 2,000 yards, was dang near MVP candidate, all of those seasons that Arthur Smith was their offensive coordinator. So it wasn't shocking to me that the Atlanta Falcons went with Bijan Robinson. And I definitely think in his first year, you're going to see him all over the place. And I really think that that's the reason why they drafted Bijan Robinson, is because Arthur Smith doesn't really look at him
Mm-hmm.
mainly as just a running back. They look at him as an offensive weapon. And if you're Atlanta Falcons fan, or if you've watched the Atlanta Falcons, if you're a fan of another team, he's going to be used similar to how we use Cordero Patterson. If you've
Right.
watched the Falcons over the last 2 years with Arthur Smith as our head coach, he basically uses Cordell Patterson kind of like that Swiss Army knife, where he's not only a kickoff returner, not only a wide receiver, but also a running back. And I see them using Bijan Robinson in the same way, similar to a Cordell Patterson. He's just a younger version. And I definitely think in his first season, he's going to be able to do big things because we have so many weapons. As you mentioned, we're a very young offense, but I do think that this Atlanta Falcons team this year is going to surprise a lot of people because of all of the weapons that we have. I really think it's going to be hard to focus in, even though everybody knows we got Bijan Robinson,
Right.
because of the Kyle Pitts, the Drake Londons, and the list goes on and on. All the guys that we have, the Jonnu Smiths who we picked up in the offseason, Tyler Algier, who kind of broke out in his rookie year with
Right.
over 1,000 yards rushing. You can't really focus on one player. And I really think that that's going to benefit a player like Bijan Robinson, where he's not going to have that pressure that normal, first round picks have. That if you're drafted that high, usually you got to come in that first year and, set the league on fire. And in this instance, I really don't think that Bijan Robinson is necessarily going to have that weight on his shoulders because he has Tyler Algier and also Cordell Patterson in the backfield with him. So I really think that he kind of can just ease his way kind of in his first year. He's not going to have
Right.
to carry the load. So I definitely
Well,
think
and
he's going to have a good season.
it's good because I feel like with Saquon Barkley in his first 2 years, that was really what got him injured. They were trying to force feed him a little bit. Now it's like imagine Kyle Pitts and what's Drake London both go deep or something like that. And then you roll out Bijan Robinson and you have him one-on-one with a linebacker. This guy, I have the number right here. He missed, let's see here. He missed 104 tackles on last season with Texas. Obviously, the my only concern with him is kind of getting used to, because he obviously played in the Big 12. My only concern is getting used to like the speed and the size of the NFL. But if he can get past that, I think having Algier, like you said, is going to benefit, because it's like you don't need to give him 20 carries per game. Give him like 12 carries per game, 4 catches, and he's going to be able to, by the end of the season, really hit his stride. And so, yeah, you're going to be able to do so many things one-on-one with him out of the backfield. It's going to be scary, to say the least. And this is how you really properly train a running back to come into the NFL, because I feel like a lot of times what you have is you have running backs who the first 2 years get used a lot, and then the rest of their career only lasts about 6 good years. Now, if you save him for like 2-3 years, it's like he could go 10, 11 years into his career and still be very productive. So that's really what stands out to me. And yeah, you guys are in a perfect position here.
Most definitely. I agree.
So let's move into a little bit of the comments here. Let's see here. Floyd Donnelly, first time to the show. So thank you for hopping in. He says, "What's up, Jew? What's up, Benjamin?" And then Arthur Smith will line him up everywhere for sure. Yeah, slot. I could see him outside, even on red zone. Yeah, red zone. Because like you have Algier. It's not Algier. You have Algier in the middle. Obviously, like inside the 5-yard line. Then you have Bijan Robinson outside. So it's like they have to watch 2 guys, and then you obviously have Pitts and Drake London. So yeah, that's gonna be fun for sure. Yeah. I got my family with me. That's cool. He says, go get Landry. Yeah. I saw that as well. Do you think you guys will get Landry?
Is that the defensive end from Tennessee?
No, Jarvis Landry, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, Jarvis Landry. I wouldn't go after Jarvis Landry if I were the Falcons. To me, I don't think that Jarvis Landry really has a lot left in the tank, to be honest. He's kind of had some
Yeah.
injuries. I mean, unless you just want to bring him in to be a veteran, in that locker room for the younger wide receivers we have, like the Drake Londons. I mean, I believe in having depth. And that's something, if you check out my channel, I always talk about having depth, because injuries in the NFL are going to happen because of the, the
Yeah,
violence of the
exactly.
game. You're going to have injuries. So that's the inevitable. But as far as Jarvis Landry, I'm not too sure. I know he played with the Saints last year, but he was injured a lot. So I tend to stay away from players that are injured a whole lot. So I don't know if they will go after a guy like Jarvis Landry. I don't think he has much left in the tank, to be honest. Now, I could be wrong, but just looking at, you know, if the Saints are going to allow him to walk in free agency, that says a lot. And to me, he just been injured a ton. And I don't see them, going after Jarvis Landry unless they just want to bring him in for that veteran leadership. But I don't really think he has much juice left in the tank, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would agree. With the Browns, wasn't that productive there, especially the last few years. And it's like Ritter, I feel like, and this is actually a perfect uh kind of segue. Ritter, in my opinion, especially this first full year that he starts, if that's assuming if he starts a full year, because you've got the guy who steals a lot of people's jobs. You've got Taylor Heineke. So we'll see what happens with him.
Right.
But I feel like with Ritter, he's going to be like a guy who's going to be a great running threat, obviously, but isn't necessarily going to elevate your team right away. And so if you bring in Landry, it's like, I don't think his production wouldn't get any better as it was in Cleveland. But my point about Ritter, obviously started to pick up the last few games, his production, But it is to be noted that the last game they were playing the Buccaneers, which were they resting? I think they were resting their all of their starters. And then the second last game was against the Falcons. Those were the two main games that he did really good in. Not Falcons, Cardinals.
Yeah.
And so are you sold that he's the QB of the future? What steps does he need to take this season for you to be completely sold?
I am kind of sold on Desmond Ritter. Now, one thing that my bro Matt Mike, my mentor, always says is wait and see. I know fans
Yeah.
hate to hear that. We hate to hear wait and see. Everybody loves predictions and to make that, that great prediction. But personally, I do think that Desmond Ritter is the guy, just the way that he carries himself and just by his collegiate career. Now, I know this is a whole different level in the NFL because we've seen guys that were great, QBs in college and then come to the NFL and really don't pan out. But personally, I definitely think that Desmond Ritter has a chance because we've seen every game he kind of progressed and got better and better and better as the season went on. But I think that he's one of those guys that's a grinder, similar to Jalen Hurts. And I did a video on my channel where I kind of talked about Desmond Ritter kind of puts me in the mind of a Jalen Hurts where he's always kind of been counted out. He's kind of been that underdog where a lot of people haven't believed in him. And if you remember a couple seasons ago, prior to Jalen Hurts, leading the Philadelphia Eagles to the Super Bowl and was he talked last year, everybody was wondering, was he really the guy last year? Going into the season
Yeah.
prior to last season. And I kind of put Desmond Ritter in that same kind of boat or category. It's like we don't really know how good he can be or how good he will be. But I believe because he's a hard worker, he works off the field. He's a true professional and like a gym rat, a guy that stays in there, a guy that, reaches out to his teammates. Is one of those guys that's going to outwork everybody. I really think that he's going to have a really good NFL career. And if you just look at the heights that he took Cincinnati to, the Cincinnati Bearcats,
Mm-hmm.
his record in college was like impeccable. For him to get them to the college
Yeah.
football playoff, that says a lot about not only him as a person, but everybody raves about his leadership. And we know the quarterback position, you have to be a leader to be that franchise type guy. And I really feel like he has all of the tools to definitely, be the quarterback of the future for the Falcons and possibly be that franchise guy. Now he still has a lot of work to do because I don't believe in handing out,
Mm-hmm.
just handing the keys to like rookie quarterback or a young guy just stating that he's going to be the next great because we don't know that. We haven't seen it yet. But I'll say he's trending upward. Everything that I've seen, everything that I've heard out of Flowery Branch, as far as the coaches and the players, everybody raves about him. Grady Jarrett, who I feel is like one of the leaders of this Atlanta Falcons team, especially on the defensive side of the ball, he raves about Desmond Ritter, stating that he's a great leader. And from the clips that I've seen and just from last season, I definitely think that Desmond Ritter has what it takes to definitely be a franchise quarterback. But we have to wait and see. That's what I say. So we'll see this season, because like you
Yeah.
said, Taylor Heineke is lurking.
Mm-hmm.
And funny thing about Taylor Heineke is I actually know a lot about Taylor Heineke because I actually seen him play in college. He actually went to the same university that my wife went to.
Oh,
Amanda Red, that's in the
okay.
chat. That's my wife, and she actually attended Old Dominion University, and that's where Taylor Heineke started. Played his college football. So I've seen Taylor Heineke all the way up. So he's one of those guys that he's chomping at the bit to get an opportunity, and we've seen everywhere he's been when he's gotten his opportunity. He's definitely a guy that can win a couple games for you. So I definitely think that Desmond Ritter is going to be on his P's and Q's because we know Taylor Heineke is capable.
Yeah, I mean, the veteran presence there is going to help for sure. I would say that when I look at that film of what Desmond Ritter did from last season, definitely something that that they need to improve on. I don't know if you see the same thing, but keeping your eyes downfield when the pressure gets tough instead of just taking off and running. Although that's not a bad thing, but I feel like if you just wait a split second longer, a window opens up, something like that, his patience. But obviously, I think a lot of the arguments that you can make about Desmond Ritter, you can make about a guy like Trey Lance, a guy that, a lot of people are like, oh, he's not he hasn't done good right away, but it's like he's only started a few games and you need to give him more time. And as time goes on, he's going to get more patient. The thing that I like about Desmond Ridder is this guy started 4 years, and really, if he would have been in any other draft, he would have probably gone in the first round. But because that draft was so talked down by scouts, which rightfully so. I mean, not a ton of the quarterbacks coming out of there have been very impressive, but um, you know, this guy still has time, and he's only started what, like 4 games, I think it is, 5 games. So yeah, very impressive to say the least. I would just like to see him maybe go through his progressions a little more instead of taking off.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. And I feel like with Desmond Ritter, another thing that, like, if you're the casual fan or if you haven't actually,
Mm-hmm.
got to watch the Falcons games in that last 4 games of the season when he took over as the starter, he really only had Drake London, because Kyle Pitts
Yeah,
suffered
that's
that
true.
injury. So he really didn't have a lot of weapons. So I really cater that to that. And that's why I keep stating that I believe that is going to play better this season because we've added those weapons. And that's similar to, like I said, with Jalen Hurts. It was the same similar situation with the Eagles before they drafted Devontae Smith, before they got AJ Brown. The Eagles didn't have a ton of receivers. And that's kind of
Yeah.
where I see with Desmond Ritter as well. Last year,
Yeah.
he really didn't have the weapons. Yeah, you had the guys in the backfield. You had Cordell Patterson, you had Tyler Algier, but outside of Drake London, you had guys like Olamide Zaccheaus. No disrespect, to him.
Yeah.
You really didn't have any household names on the outside, and you had guys like Michael Pruitt who took over for Kyle
Mm-hmm.
Pitts. So we had, third and second and third string type guys that were filling in. So he really wasn't playing with that top tier talent. So sometimes in a quarterback situation, it's kind of hard to tell how good a quarterback is. Similar to what you're saying with Trey Lance, until he plays with, more talented players, it's hard for me to kind of put my finger on, is it him or is it the guys around him that's not
Right.
up to par?
Yeah. Well, and you guys definitely improved your defense as well. I mean, you got you have the guy Jesse Bates, didn't you get him?
Yeah,
No.
Jesse
Yeah,
Bates.
Jesse Bates. And then there was one other corner that you guys got
Jeff
uh
Okuda,
yeah, Jeff
from
Okuda.
Detroit.
Yeah. Which he's a developmental player, but you guys got a solid secondary player, one of the best safeties in the league, and then you obviously got the right tackle, not Jake Matthews. His name is he's
Caleb
also
McGarry.
escaping. Yeah, Caleb McGarry. There we go.
Yeah, Caleb McGarry and Chris Lindstrom re-signed.
Which
Yeah,
that to me I think is a really good fit because if you're planning to run the ball, do a split backfield, Caleb McGarry is a very good run blocker. So
yeah.
one of the best in the league. So excited to see that one as well. So but yeah, I want to quickly give a shout out because Falcons fans really they really they really show support. We've got 17 people in here, so I love how you guys are just coming in here and blessing us with your comments. But let's get to a little bit of them. Let's see here. Zayena in the bag. Zay in a bag. Sorry. I'm okay with Hollins. They just want us to chase big name players. But when we bring that big name in and it doesn't work out, they're going to put the blame on us. It's a lose-lose situation. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hollins
that goes back
is
to the Jarvis Landry talk. That's why I said for the Jarvis Landry talk, I'm good on Jarvis Landry. No
right.
disrespect, he's a name, but you got to look at the production, over the last couple seasons. He hasn't had that
Mhm.
production. So you can have a name, but we've seen guys come in, no disrespect, to like the Todd Gurleys and the Steven Jackson running back that we brought in from the Rams a couple years ago. A lot of those guys were past their prime. So it goes back to what Zay in the bag is saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, we've been burned a couple times by trying to go out and get those veteran guys, that had a name or were once great players, but are no longer playing at that top tier, level.
Right. The Bucks did not rest their starters. Yeah, I'm looking back at it now, and I realized that you guys really should have won that division because you should have beaten them twice.
Yeah, yeah,
Really, that kind of is a sore spot because you had the bad roughing the passer the first time, and then the second time you smoked them. So yeah.
yeah,
Would you prefer Yannick? There's so many veterans. I saw a list on Twitter the other day about how many like the veterans still out there in free agency, and if you brought those veterans back to 2017, they would be winning the Super Bowl because it's like Leonard Fournette, it's the Melvin Ingram, a
yeah.
few really quality stars a few years ago. So yeah, that would have been interesting. They wouldn't be a bad team if you put them all together. Tom Brady was out there the first half. Grady was getting after him, and they took him out. Yeah, didn't want to
Yeah,
get
we
hurt.
know how that was gonna go. Grady was pissed off, ticked off from that first game, that phantom rush from the roughing the passer call. Once they seen Grady get like a tackle for loss, they just like pulled the starters. So I
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
understand. And they were getting ready for the playoffs. They had pretty much had the division wrapped up because of that, like you said, that phantom call. And I really
yeah,
don't put it just on one call because we had so many games last year. If you go look at the scores of our games last year, we had so many one possession games that we lost.
yeah.
So we kind of got to put it on ourselves. Even though I was pissed off too about that whole phantom roughing the passer call, we had games that we should have won. That was right there for the taking, and for whatever reason, we just couldn't. We couldn't close, man.
Was
That's
it
what the last season came down to.
Panthers won the overtime game? Was it you guys or the Panthers who won that game? The
Um,
crazy back and forth overtime.
so we actually won that game, but we had that
Okay.
terrible Thursday night game against the Panthers where Mariota was throwing crazy interceptions. Yeah, man, we had a
Yeah.
terrible. The first game we beat them because they had like a crazy, almost like a Hail Mary pass to DJ Moore, but he took his helmet off and they got a penalty and they missed the extra
That's
point.
right. Oh,
So we
that's
ended
right.
up
That's
winning that
right.
first game in Atlanta, but then they beat us when we went to Carolina on that Thursday night game. So they got their revenge in that game. And that was one of the I would say that was probably the worst game we played last season, was that game
Yeah.
against Carolina in Carolina.
Interesting. Taylor Heineke is a baller. Yeah, he is the guy who, I mean, he comes up clutch for every every team. What's up, Goose Peckers? That's my guy, Tommy Huxley. Welcome. He tends to talk a little bit of trash in the chat, so don't mind him. But um, hey, I respect your guys. I mean, you're looking back at it, the offense. I don't know if they're going to be goose peckers anymore because the offense is going to be scary this year. That's for sure. But moving on, Drake London or Kyle Pitts, who has more targets? I need to actually split this up. And then obviously this is kind of like a two-part thing. So Drake London or Kyle Pitts first, who has more targets?
I'll say Drake London will have more targets. And the reason I say that, I think Kyle Pitts, he's kind of garnered the respect around the league because he's kind of that freak of nature athlete, very fast, a guy that's one of the better tight ends in the league. People kind of forget that because last year he went down with that injury. But if you look at his first year, he almost broke Mike Dicker's record for most receiving yards for a rookie tight end. So he had over 1,000 yards, was a Pro Bowler in his rookie season. So I really think it's going to be Drake London because I really think that Kyle Pitts is going to see most of the double teams like he's
Yeah.
had since he's been in the league. So Drake London is going to see a lot of one-on-one coverage. And if you watched last season, Desmond Ridder and Drake London were drafted in the same draft. So those guys have that chemistry. For whatever reason, that 1-2 punch, like we had Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, to me, they have a chance to be that next great wide receiver quarterback duo. And they
Mm-hmm.
just seem to always be on the same wavelength. For whatever reason, Desmond Ridder trusts Drake London, and they always are on the same page. So I think this season, Drake London will probably have more receiving yards and have more targets just because everybody's going to double team Kyle Pitts because you have to because of his athleticism and kind of where he lines up. Usually, if he's lined up at a tight end, they bracket him with a linebacker and the safety or a corner and the safety over the
Mm-hmm.
top. So you're going to see Drake London in a lot of man-to-man situations. And we seen last year that Desmond
Right.
Ridder is one of those quarterbacks where he's going to throw it up and give Drake London a chance. And Drake London is not the fastest guy, like far as running a 40, but he's a guy in a one-on-one situation because he's a former basketball star. If you
Mm-hmm.
throw it up there and give him an opportunity, he's going to win most of those 50-50, 50-50 balls. So when it come down to high point in the football and making those tough catches across the middle, I definitely think it's going to be Drake London because they kind of line him up everywhere in the slot. They do a lot of different things to get Drake London open, and he's a great route runner for his size, and he's a big body wide receiver. So I'll go with Drake London in this situation just because of the chemistry. Like Desmond Ridder, it's going to take him time to gain that chemistry with Kyle Pitts because he was injured. So they haven't really played
Mm.
together.
Yeah, that's true. And when you're targeting that big bodied receiver, there's obviously going to be a lot more tight windows. It depends on what type of play. like you said, when you're targeting that big receiver, but it's like the tight windows there. It's like the passer rating when targeted, Drake London at an 87, made quarterbacks have an 87 passer rating. So, I mean, we'll see. But let's move on to the next one. Let's see here. Did I ever make that second one? Well, I can get it up there. But who has more rushing touchdowns, Algier or so basically Bijan Robinson or Tyler Algier?
Who has more rushing touchdowns? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I mean, you might even have to throw Cordell Patterson's name in that
Yeah.
equation. All three of those guys. I probably will go with Tyler Algier, because Tyler Algier is a guy you can put him in on the goal line, both him and Cordell Patterson, and they just gonna, like, if you watch that game against the Chargers where Cordell Patterson basically
Right.
just put their linebacker in the weight room. Like, I really think that's gonna come
Yeah.
down to probably Algier or Cordell Patterson. I think he's gonna get his touches and things of that nature, but I think when it comes to getting the ball in the end zone, when you get inside the 5-yard line, I think they'll put Tyler Algier in. So I think it's gonna be Tyler Algier out of those two. Out of Robinson, it probably would be Tyler Algier, because he's kind of the forgotten man at this point. Both him and Cordell Patterson, people
Hmm.
forget how good Tyler Algier or how well he played last season because of Bijan Robinson and the hype train. Not saying that Bijan Robinson's not going to be good, because I do think he's going to have his moments as well. But I think as far as touchdowns, I either think it'll be Cordell Patterson or Tyler
Hmm.
Algier, because Cordell Patterson is like a magnet for the end zone for whatever reason. Since he's been with the Falcons, if you're a fantasy football, if you play fantasy football, you want Cordell Patterson on your team, because he's a guy that puts the ball in the end zone. For some reason, he's just a playmaker.
Yeah, and when you get to the league, it's like you're learning how to be professional. You're obviously bulking up, and it's the same with offensive linemen. Everyone, defensive linemen, offensive linemen are grown men. Like they're not playing around. And so Robinson's going to have to learn that. I don't think he's going to obviously be ready quite right away to deal with the strength. And obviously his game was in space. It wasn't in the red zone. You have Algier, who's coming in second year, sophomore season, is kind of learning the flow of things, should be better there. And obviously stronger is that type of power back. So I'm going to say Algier. I could see him getting upwards of 9 rushing touchdowns, maybe more, upwards of 9 rushing touchdowns next year. How many did he have last year? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head how many he had, but I know once he got going, because a lot of people don't realize he didn't start off even on the active roster
Yeah,
uh,
that's true.
last
He
season.
was a
Well, he was on
breakout
the
player,
active
that's for sure.
roster, but I think the first game of the season, he was not even in the active 53. We started against the Saints, our first game of the season. He didn't even dress for that game. So
Mhm.
once he finally got out there on the field, and that's because Cordell Patterson got injured. He really took off once Cordell Patterson got injured. And him and Caleb Huntley, those guys kind of took over. So that's kind of when he actually hit his stride,
Mhm.
when Cordell Patterson went out, and we kind of found a diamond in the rough kind of situation. So I definitely
Int
think that Tyler Algier is one of those guys. I think he was a 5th-round pick, so out of BYU. So he's
Yeah.
definitely one of those guys that's kind of under the radar, but I think his name is going to, once the Falcons start winning a lot more games, I think around the league his name will be more known.
Only 3 rushing touchdowns. I could have sworn it was more than that. I mean, I had him the last few weeks in a few of my fantasy leagues, and he was going off, but I guess he had over 1,000 rushing yards. Mad Mike Sports says, "Do you think most veteran free agents are being blackballed?" Yeah, I mean, the weird thing to me is like you have Leonard Fournette, and you don't think, I mean, yeah, injury wise, but he's still a great running back. And then you have obviously somebody brought up Yannick Ngakwe the other day. You guys could get him as well. What do you think about that?
I think that we could get Yannick Ngakoue or even like a Leonard Fournette. I think the problem with these veteran guys, they're asking for too much money. I really think that
Oh,
that's the
yeah.
issue. I don't really think that it comes down to like no team wants them on their team. It's just that it has to be at the right price tag. And that's where it goes back to what I was talking about with Jarvis Landry. It's like I wouldn't mind having any of those guys that we named, Yannick Ngakoue. Leonard Fournette is another guy that I think any team would love to have him, but it's like at what price? And
Hmm.
that's what we're seeing with guys like we recently seen Saquon Barkley. He wants more money, but it's like a lot of these running backs, for whatever reason, they're afraid that these guys are going to get injured. You've seen
Hmm.
Dalvin Cook get released by the Vikings. Like, they're not trying to pay these older veteran guys that kind of got that wear and tear on their bodies, that top dollar when you know you can go in the draft like the Falcons did. And that's why I was shocked at first that we went after Bijan Robinson, because you had a fifth round pick do what he did in Tyler Algier. It's like, wow, I think a lot of teams are picking up on, you can go in the draft and find gems in the run, and not
Right.
pay them a whole lot of money, but still get the production. So it's been guys, we've seen the Isaiah Pacheco's that played with the Kansas City Chiefs. He was like a 6 or 7 round
Yeah.
pick last year, set the league on fire. So I really think that that's it. I don't really think that the guys are being blackballed. I just think you have to, play ball. It has to be at the right price
Right.
tag. If you're not, if you're looking for that top dollar, I don't see a guy like Leonard Fournette or any of these older, veteran guys getting that top dollar unless you're just balling.
Right. Well, the thing that I didn't get is, why did OBJ get signed for 15 million? I did not think he was worth that much. But I mean, obviously he played good for the Rams, but now coming off the ACL, who knows what he's gonna do. I didn't get that at all. I think they kind of slightly overpaid for him, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, they did. They did. That was more, I think, to appease Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
He's been asking for more talent at wide receiver position. So they're like, okay, we're going to go out and bring in a guy who's proven. And I think OBJ is good, but like, it goes back to what we've been saying. Like, is he going to stay healthy? It's not really about his game. Like, when he's on the field, we seen with the Rams that 2 years ago, he was balling when he was on the field. It's just, will his knees hold up? Will
Yeah,
his legs hold up?
true. Let's see. What about DeAndre Hopkins taking so long to sign? I think he's going to sign closer to training camp. That's just my opinion. Usually guys like that get signed like even close to week one. I think a lot of times people tend to see preseason what works out and then sign them, or even training camp if anyone goes down. Um, so let's move on. The Falcons have the third highest odds to end their playoff drought. I can't remember who this was according to, but who will have to step up if they're going to make that happen? Obviously, the defense is a big part. You were talking about the defensive line, how they've struggled to stop the run in the past. Last season, their defense was, I mean, it wasn't as bad as the Lions, but it could have been better. It could have been better. Um, so yeah, what's your thoughts on this?
I really think it's going to have to be the defensive line, like you said, and the defense in general. If we're going to end the playoff drought, and I really think that the key to this drought, ending, is us signing Calais Campbell.
Right.
Like, us signing Calais Campbell was the biggest, to me, the biggest signing, even over a guy like Jesse Bates, who a lot of people, were very excited, and I was excited as well that we were able to, snag him from the Cincinnati Bengals. But I really think the biggest signing for this Atlanta Falcons team this offseason was Calais Campbell, because he'll
Hmm.
be able to unlock a player, in Grady Jarrett, who's kind of been under the radar as well. Like, to me, Grady Jarrett is one of the top interior defensive linemen in the league, but he doesn't get that notoriety because he plays for the Falcons. And we haven't had, ever since the Super Bowl, since 2017, after we went back to the playoffs, 2018 forward, we really haven't had any, we haven't made the playoffs, and we've
Hmm.
had bad seasons. So he's kind of went under the radar. So we have good players on the team, but I feel like the biggest player that we brought in was Calais Campbell, because he'll be that guy on the defensive line that you have to pay attention to, because he's 6'8". Everybody talks about how big he is. He's like a
Yeah.
giant walking around the locker room and walking around on the field. So automatically, those double teams and triple teams that Grady Jarrett was seeing on that defensive line, you automatically have to beeline and take a look at, that giant on the defensive line
Yeah.
and Calais Campbell. So I think that the defensive line is going to take a step forward. I mean, we brought in guys like Bud Dupree, who's another
Mhm.
veteran guy who's battled injuries, but he came in on a reasonable deal, and he's from Georgia. So they brought him in to kind of help these younger guys come along, like the Arnold Ebiketis that we drafted last year. We still have Lorenzo Carter, that's in that rotation on that defensive line. So we have guys. I mean, Onyemata we brought in. He's also an interior defensive lineman we brought over for the New Orleans Saints, who's a very disruptive defensive lineman. So I really think that our defensive line is going to be one of the better groups in the league. And it's been a like since I've had my channel, I've been talking about us improving that defensive line and improving the
Mhm.
trenches. And this is the first season that, or the last time I can think of us having like this deep of a core unit on the defensive line. So I really think that, yeah, that's going to be the biggest thing that I'm paying attention to this year is that defensive line. And can we wreak havoc on the quarterback? Because, as a 49ers fan, when you have
Yes,
Bosa coming
sir.
off the edge, when you have y'all got Javon Hargraves, who was a guy that I was craving. We had the money
Yeah.
to get him, and I wanted the Falcons to go after him, but y'all end up getting him. You know
Well,
how putting pressure on the quarterback is key.
we paid a premium for that dude. I mean, we outbid a lot of teams, but I'm like, no, I do not. I do not. Like at first I was like, what? That is a lot of money to pay a aging veteran, but you know, if now is there my question to you, is there any like young talent on that front that you guys drafted? I haven't got a chance to look back at kind of the draft. We'll obviously get into that a little bit more, but is there any like young talent that you guys have drafted that, because obviously what is it? Calais Campbell has dealt with injuries in his career. You obviously talked about Bud Dupree. It's like there is no way those their guys are gonna kind of last the whole season playing full snaps. So is there any like younger talent on that defensive line as well?
So we do. We got Arnold Ebiketie. We drafted him last season in the second round. We traded up for him out of Penn State. He's a very good edge rusher. Like if you have a chance to check out, his tapes or highlights on YouTube, like when he was in college, when they do breakdown of him, very good using his hands, got spin
Mm,
moves. He's really good. He's just young and raw. He's a raw talent,
yeah,
but he's a guy that I think this year could possibly break out because he has those veterans in front of him. We drafted I believe 2 years ago Ogundeji, who played with Notre Dame. He's a guy that's like 6'4", 6'5", long
yeah,
arm. He's another guy that can rush the passer. And then we got Lorenzo Carter that we brought over from the New York Giants. He played really well for us last season. So we have a rotation of guys. And then we also have a young player in D'Angelo Malone, who I recently did a video on as well. He's like 6'4", and he puts you in the mind of a player like Leonard Floyd that played with the
mm,
Rams. He's a guy that usually rushes standing up like an outside linebacker, but he's a guy that played at Western Kentucky, but he had really good numbers as far as sacks. But last year, he mainly played special teams, but I really think that he could break out as well. So we have like 3 or 4 guys that are young edge rushers,
right.
not counting Caden Ellis, who we brought over from the Saints, who had about 7 or 8 sacks last year
Ooh,
but he plays the linebacker position. So he'll be
yeah,
playing a little bit of inside linebacker, hybrid, outside linebacker. So he'll be a guy that we're going to add in the mix, to rush the passer as well. So we have guys on this team, a lot of young talent, untapped, potential. We just got to see which player is going to step up. That's the thing this
yeah.
year. Like out of all of those guys I named about 4 or 5 guys, but we don't know which guy. Personally, I think it's going to be Arnold Ebiketie because he showed the most promise last season. But we have 3 or 4 guys that could possibly break out.
Well, that's really all it is, just depth, bodies, and as long as you have the really good coach. The thing I like about my team is we have one of the best defensive line coach in the league in Chris Kasarik. So I don't know what your guys' defensive line coach is, but if he's solid, if he's a good leader, if he's good at kind of developing those guys, then you're going to be in a great position for sure. So
Yeah, so we actually snagged the New Orleans Saints former
okay,
defensive line coach. So he actually brought over Onyemata. He brought over Kalen Ellis. So we
yeah,
was able to steal a couple guys out of the enemy's camp to join us. So
yeah,
if the Saints have been one of those teams over the last couple seasons. As much as we hate the Saints, they've been a team that's had a stout, defensive line
yeah,
for a number of years. They were one of the best run stopping, defenses over the last couple years. So we have their former defensive line coach, who's now our defensive coordinator because Dean Pease retired. So
mm,
we
okay,
definitely brought over Ryan Nielsen, is now our defensive coordinator, and he basically specializes in developing talent as far as the defensive line.
mm,
He was one of those guys that developed one of my favorite players that is not a Falcons player, in Trey Hendrickson, that plays with the Bengals. When he was with the
right.
Saints, he helped develop him. So I definitely think that we have promise, and we definitely brought in, the coaches to help develop the talent. We just got to see if the players you'll actually, bloom.
Well, that gives me something to think about. That's definitely, building your team, truly rebuilding your team is definitely fun to see. Caden Ellis, Troy Anderson will add a few sacks. Yeah, that's OG's more Falcons fans here. 28. Oh
Tommy,
man, 20,
Tommy trolling in the chat.
28 to 3. Yes. Um,
Tell
that was a
Tommy he
long
must have
time ago.
tell Tommy he must have forgot we beat y'all last year. I think
Wait,
we
was
gave
it?
y'all. I think we gave y'all
Oh
like a
yeah, it
good.
was last year.
I think that was like a good what 2 touchdowns we beat y'all by when y'all came to
Oh.
Atlanta. I mean,
Well,
we
I mean,
owe.
we were so injured last year that week.
Yeah,
Ugh.
man. I
Well,
mean, it's a part of the game. I know it's all
yeah,
fun, but yeah, man, anytime we play you guys, we gotta give it to you guys because of Kyle Shanahan. I mean,
yeah,
I'm a Christian man myself, but it took me a long time to forgive Kyle Shanahan for what he did in that Super Bowl with not running the football and trying to
yeah.
pass it against Tom Brady and that defense of the New England Patriots, man. I mean, it took me probably about a good 2 to 3 years to finally forgive Shanahan, and give him a second chance. But it took me a long time, man. Like I still not completely over it, even though 28-3, yeah, like Falcons fans, that don't even sting anymore. 28-3, because that was like so long ago. Like, man, he talk about 28-3, like that was so long ago, man.
Well,
So
it was already 7 years ago. I mean, it's
yeah,
time
at this,
flies, really. I know exactly where I was. We were living on this lake house in the middle of South Carolina, and we weren't watching it on TV. We were doing something else, and I was listening to it on the radio, and that
oh
was quite
wow.
sensational to say the least. I was first half, I was like, oh my gosh, Tom Brady is finally gonna get like fine. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then yeah. And I mean, Kyle Shanahan has kind of a history with doing that because he gave up a 10-point lead to the Chiefs as well. And within like 7 minutes, I remember in that 2020 Super Bowl, um, I think it was Emmanuel Mosley getting the interception on Patrick Mahomes, and me being like, if we score even like a field goal, this game is basically over. And that didn't happen. So yeah, for sure. And obviously it wasn't all his fault. It was Jimmy Garoppolo a little bit as well. So Carcast in here. Sup guys? Go subscribe to his channel. I think it was the Falcons defense that lost that game. Yeah. ATL Leo, the Targaryen Lion. What's up, What's up, Jew? What? Forgive me. I don't know what that is. It might be some. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm.
man. These are all Falcons fans, man. They definitely flooding the chat. So I appreciate
Yeah.
all my
Yeah.
Falcons fans. Everybody that's been giving shout outs, man. Shouts out to you guys. I appreciate y'all showing up strong. That's how we do, man. Anytime we come on anybody else's show, they take over the chat. So shouts out to them, man.
Yeah. Thank you. Again, thank you guys for all supporting because I usually have about 6 people in here. Now I have 20. So thank you guys so much. I'm not sure if I'll ever forgive Shanahan. Yeah, I mean, you have a right not to, but we beat you guys when it really mattered. NFC Championship. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but that was
Yeah,
like a long, long
yeah,
time ago.
yeah,
11
y'all
years
right.
ago.
Yeah, that was 2012. Yeah, y'all, the Falcons and the 49ers, man, y'all like one of those rivals. Because if you
Yeah.
remember, years ago, the Falcons and the 49ers was in the same division. So this goes like way back to Jerry Rice and Deion Sanders going up against each other. Like this goes way back. Like this runs deep like the Saints as far as the
Hmm.
rivalry. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me if it comes down to the Atlanta Falcons and the 49ers in the playoffs this year. Because I really think that
Yeah.
we're going to definitely break the drought. And if you guys somehow, which I think you guys always somehow, some way end up winning y'all division and making the playoffs, I definitely can see it coming down to the Falcons and the 49ers somehow, some way, whether it's the NFC Championship again or whether it's in the division
Yeah.
round. Somehow, some way, we're going to end up on the same road and we're going to have to face each other. So
That 2012 playoff game was one of my first 49ers memories of me watching that in the Saints. We played the Saints and the Falcons same year, but yeah, those are some of my first memories. That comeback that we made. I think it was. I'm pretty sure. If I can't, I think it was a comeback. I'm not
It
really
was
sure. I don't
2012 was a
remember a ton
comeback.
of it, but
That was
yeah,
definitely a comeback because we went up like 21-0 or 21-3 because it was like two Julio Jones touchdowns. I
yeah,
remember that was the year I had Frank Gore. So y'all came back, y'all had Kaepernick at that time.
yeah,
And that one kind of still stung for a while as well because to me that's one of the better Atlanta Falcons teams that should have won the Super Bowl. And I really think if we would have beaten you guys, I think we would have beaten Ray Lewis and that Ravens team in the Super Bowl because that offense was
right,
so high powered, man. You had
yeah,
Michael Turner, Tony Gonzalez, Julio Jones, Roddy White. That was that Falcons team. So that was a super young Matt Ryan, like it not even hitting his prime yet. So
yeah,
I definitely think that would have been there definitely could have been a chance that the Falcons could have won that Super Bowl. But that was a great comeback by the 49ers in that it was actually in the Georgia Dome at home. So yeah, I will never
yeah.
forget that game as well.
I
Epic comeback.
remember. I remember a few years ago before we move on, Julio Jones. Was it? Yeah, it was the Super Bowl year, 2019. I think he went off for like what? It was like 12 catches and he basically single-handedly won you guys the game. And you guys were like super big underdogs. You didn't even make the playoffs, I don't think, that year. But like it was right before the end of the season and we were I believe it was right before the Seahawks game. We were looking ahead towards that game and it was a major trap game and we lost. I think it was in overtime and you guys weren't even that good, but like somehow we lost. It was a mystery to me, but yeah.
I'll tell you what it
Um,
was. We was trying to stick it to Kyle Shanahan, man. Every time we
yeah,
see y'all now, man, it's about Kyle Shanahan. For whatever reason, every time we face you guys, at least that's just in my mind, they're like, we got to stick it to Kyle because he did us dirty. But at this point, they might have let bygones be bygones because a lot of those guys that was on that 2016 Falcons team are now either
yeah,
retired or they're on another team. So like we only have Grady Jarrett and Jake Matthews. They're like the only two guys left from that 2016 Super Bowl
right,
team. So all of these new guys, they don't have no beef with Kyle Shanahan. But in
yeah,
that year you're talking about, I remember Julio Jones scored the game-winning touchdown where he barely broke the plane, Matt
yes,
Ryan to Julio
yes,
Jones.
I
I remember
remember
that
that.
game, and we didn't make
Yep.
the playoffs. We weren't even that good that season. But
No,
like I said, somehow, some way,
no,
we're gonna find a way to stick it to Kyle Shanahan.
yeah. Um, so real quick, we probably touched on this a little bit, but what would you grade the Falcons offseason? What were your favorite and disappointing moves the Falcons made?
Uh, the grade will be an A+. Like this off season
Yeah,
has been great. Like the Falcons, I mean, I couldn't ask for anything, better. Like I said,
right.
I've been banging the table for bringing in defensive talent, going in and getting like a real name, like that somebody that's going to come in and make a difference on the defensive line and be like a leader. And we really haven't had that since 2016. If you remember, we had Dwight
Yeah.
Freeney come over from the former great Colts pass rusher came over. Like I think it was like halfway through the season or something like that. He didn't even start the season with our team, but we somehow end up picking him up and he was a huge pickup for our Atlanta Falcons. But I really think that Calais Campbell is going to have that similar, kind of impact that Dwight Freeney was able to have on guys like Vic Beasley, who we had at that time, who led the league in sacks in 2016 when we went to the Super Bowl. So
Hmm.
I would give it an A+ just for the mere fact of we actually were able to bring in the Jesse Bates and we had these great players choose Atlanta because it's been a long time
Hmm.
since we've seen like great players want to actually come and play in Atlanta. So it's this is to me it's been one of the best off seasons that I can remember as a Falcons fan. And right now, like the fans are so ready for the season, man. I can't remember a season where it's been this much anticipation
Hmm.
because of the roster, because of the question marks of how great this team could possibly be this season. So I would give it an A+ just for the mere fact of who we were able to bring in, not only in free agency, but also the draft. I think we had a really
Hmm.
good draft. And we were able to retain, as I mentioned, Chris Lindstrom on the offensive line, Caleb
Right.
McGarry. And I think that those are like two linchpins of this Atlanta Falcons team. As I always talk about the trenches, we were able to solidify that offensive line, and then we were able to, solidify the defensive line. And if you've watched my channel, I always
Hmm.
talk about the trenches is where the games are won and lost in the NFL. If you can dominate in the trenches, you're going to win a lot of football games and you give yourself a chance. Of course, some of it comes down to luck as far as getting into the Super Bowl because injuries are going to factor in at some point. But, if you got depth and you got the depth in the trenches, usually if your guys can stay healthy, which in 2016 we did stay healthy on our offensive line, and we were like one of the only teams where we had, our guys play all 16 games, all 5 guys up front. If we can do that again this year, I really think that this Falcons team could, go deep in the playoffs.
Well, and you were talking about Caleb McGarry, and although he is a good player, I think his average annual salary was $17 million, correct? Yeah.
I think something like
I
that.
think you guys overpaid for him. And this is not saying that he's bad. He's a really good run blocker, one of the best in the league. But to me, it's like pass blocking. He allowed 6 sacks. He had like 4 penalties, which that's okay. But like pass blocking wise, not great. And we saw with the 49ers, Mike McGlinchey, I actually can, those are 2 very, very similar players. When Desmond Ridder drops back or anything like that, it's like, big time games, divisional round of the playoffs. I don't know how much he's going to have to hold up. And the thing is like he's known for his run blocking, but his pass blocking is like average. And so for what you guys paid for him, obviously you paid a lot for your free agency guys, and that's what you have to do when you're a startup, when you're starting your team over again. But I just feel like I don't know. You guys got him for maybe overpaid a little bit. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Caleb McGarry, he's not the best right tackle in the league, but I think it's going to come down to chemistry. Chris Lindstrom is the guy that is like the star of our offensive line. They paid him like $100 million contract, which is he plays like the guard position. But I really think that how we kind of hide some of the flaws of Caleb McGarry is we're going to smash mouth football you to death.
Yeah,
so we're going to punch you in the mouth to death. We're going to hit you right up the gut with the run game. And then at that point, we're not going to have to rely on pass protection. And that's really what kind of hurt Caleb McGarry early in his career. We had offensive coordinators and Dirk Cutter who wanted to throw the ball 30 to 40, 45 times a game. So you had these guys backpedaling the whole game.
Yeah.
And I always talk about big uglies, big guys in the trenches. They want to move people. They want to move you around like some weights in the weight room. So I really think that they got the right offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith, where he's a coach, coming from Tennessee, where they ran the ball, and then they hit you with the play action. And I really think that that's what they're going to do with Desmond Ridder. I really don't think they're going to rely on him necessarily, starting the game of passing the ball. And if they do, it's to keep the defense off balance. I really feel like it's going to be mainly a power run game. And then at that point, once you have to bring all of those guys down in the box, then we're going to hit you over the top. So I definitely understand what you're saying about Caleb McGarry, but I think they did a good job of kind of covering up his blemishes, basically. And that's what a great offensive coordinator does. They do what you do best, which is he's a great run blocker. So we're going to run it to your side behind you and Chris Lindstrom. They coming right up the gut, right behind you 2 guys. So I expect to see a lot of power runs up, on their right side because of the, that they've solidified that side.
Yeah, we'll see. Very interesting. Tommy says, well, I hope you guys win a Super Bowl soon. Yeah. I mean, I want the 49ers to win one sooner. It's a shame. Our window's closing, man. We have 2 years, I think, that we still have left of all our guys together. And then we're going to have to start slowly replacing some of the older veterans. It's crazy how time goes by, though. I mean, going back to Caleb McGarry, he is 26 years old. But like if you look at like George Kittle, and it's like I remember watching him when he was like 24 years old, and now he's 30. So yeah, time goes by. I think realistic, they may win the Super Bowl in New Orleans. I can say they may make an NFC Championship run and make a Super Bowl win in New Orleans. What year is that? Is this?
I think that's
next
year.
Next year.
I think that's next year, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know where it is this season, but I think he's referring to next season. If I'm not mistaken, it's not in New Orleans this year. It's next year. But I mean, I think the Falcons have a chance to be a dark horse Super Bowl team this year because for whatever reason, the Falcons play well when we're not expected to play good. Like 2016, if you go look at like the articles that were written about that 2016 team, they kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody's seen them coming. Nobody's right now. Nobody's talking about, the Falcons as even a deep playoff run team. They're just talking about us as a startup. So we went 7-10, 7-10 in Arthur Smith's first season with basically guys on 1 year deals and rookies because we didn't have any money because we had to move off of Matt Ryan, who had a large contract. We had to
Right.
move off Julio Jones, who we traded, and we kind of just ate that dead cap. So we had like the
That was a
largest
good
dead
move,
cap.
though.
Yeah, it was a good move, but we
Yeah.
had to eat that dead cap. So I'm just excited to see what Arthur Smith can actually do now because you've added talent. Like the last couple
Right.
of seasons, you've just been adding talent through the draft. So I really think this year, I like us being under the radar because there's no expectations. But I really think that this season we could be one of those sneaky teams where later on next year, possibly I can come back on your show and we can talk about us possibly being in the
Yeah.
playoffs. But
Yeah, for sure.
I definitely think that this team is going to surprise a lot of people. I almost can guarantee I think there will be a playoff team now. Making a deep run, we'll see. But if we're like a 1 or 2 seed, then you one playoff game, you in the divisional round, NFC
Yeah.
championship game. So anything is possible.
When you guys, I mean, you don't have the hardest schedule. Obviously, that could change.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mad Mike Sports, yeah, Mad Mike Sports says he and Lindstrom have massive chemistry. Yeah, that's what you were talking about. How do you think Drake London will do this season? I think he's going to be over 1,000 yards. He had 860 off of like what it was 80 targets or something. So yeah, I
Yeah,
could
he's
see him
gonna
getting
get
upwards of 100.
Yeah, he gonna clip 1,000. He should have did it last season, but we just didn't have the quarterback the
Yeah,
quarterback play. But this year, you seen like as soon as Desmond Ritter got in the game, he had started having 100-yard game, receiving game. So this year, I definitely think Drake London. I think he's gonna lead the Falcons in receiving yards.
yeah. Wow, this has been great. I would love, man, this is your knowledge of the Falcons is really, really amazing how you can just talk for an hour about them. So we've reached an hour, everyone. We're gonna get up out of here. Tell them one more time. We've got a few most people are from your side, but we got a few Niners fans in here. So tell them one more time where they can find you.
Most definitely. You can find me on YouTube at Jew Talk Sports. You can find me on Twitter at Jew Talk Sports. So everything is at Jew Talk Sports. You can find me on Instagram. So definitely follow your boy. But I'm heavy on Twitter. Like I'm always on Twitter. I'm not so
Yeah,
much on Instagram unless I posted a video and I'm just kind of sharing my video to Instagram. So I would say if you're going to definitely want to follow me, it'll be on YouTube and Twitter. Instagram is like it takes the back seat to those two
yeah.
platforms. So definitely, you can find all of my news, the latest updates and stuff like that on YouTube and on Twitter.
Well, guys, this has been great. Obviously, the YouTube and Twitter in the description. Yeah, we marked, guys, this has been a great show. Go have a good rest of your evening. We marked now Falcons off of the list. So we're going to try to get maybe a Buccaneers content creator on here next. And then tomorrow night, don't miss it, everyone. We've got a Lions content creator on Gridiron Blitz. That should be a lot of fun as well. So go check that show out. And yeah, we'll see you guys again later. Go Niners. And I guess in this case, you can probably say go Falcons. I don't know.
Yeah, we like to say rise up around our part.